To Alberta Prime Time. No means no. An Alberta judge overturns a sexual assault acquittal while explaining the meaning of consent. Graham James requests full parole and a 6-month jail sentence for the cooking and killing of a cat. Just our Wednesday crime panel is here, and joining us tonight is defense lawyer Dino Bottos in Edmonton. In Calgary, defense lawyer Greg Dunn, and making his crime panel debut is court reporter with Postmedia Network, Kevin Martin. Good evening, you three, and welcome, Kevin. Nice to have you all here.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
All right, let's get started. An Alberta Court of Queen's Bench justice overturned the acquittal of a sexual assault last week while taking the time to educate a lower court judge about consent. In a 7-page ruling, Justice Juliana Toplinski wrote, "The word no, coupled with fending off an attacker with a water bottle, does not mean yes. There is nothing ambiguous about it." Here is how some in the legal community are responding.
She was very clear and direct. Excellent. We need that clarity, and we need people to understand the law because it prevents people from coming forward.
In overturning youth court judge Michael Saverin's acquittal, Justice Topolniski found a 15-year-old boy guilty of sexual assaulting a 15-year-old girl at their school. In video surveillance submitted at trial, the teenage girl is first seen smiling and giggling before walking away. The boy will appear in a provincial court this month for sentencing. Do you know, how rare was the judge's decision to overturn a sexual assault acquittal?
Well, overturning acquittals or convictions are relatively rare because appellate courts are supposed to show considerable deference to the trial judge's findings of fact and their applications of facts to the law. Here, the trial judge was supposed to get two things right. He was supposed to first determine whether the complainant was consenting or not consenting to the sexual activity in question. And if she was not consenting, which is something subjective in her own mind, but he had to make a finding of fact on that basis. If she was not consenting, whether the accused could still be innocent by having an honest but mistaken belief as to her consent. Where the trial judge fell into error and the appellate justice overruled his findings was that he had a doubt that she was not consenting, meaning he believed she was consenting, but he came to that conclusion based on stereotypical myths and stereotypes, such as if you're not consenting to sexual activity, you should be running down the hallway screaming, or you should be turning to the nearest person, such as a janitor, and claiming or seeking help, or not giggling afterwards or smiling afterwards. So these are faulty sources of reasoning in sexual assault cases, which still infiltrate people's thinking. And when that happens, an appellate court is supposed to step in and say, your reasoning is faulty, and that's what the appellate justice did in this case.
That's in that case. Well, Kevin, the handling of sexual assault cases is a hot button issue all across North America right now. Are there decisions in these cases under a higher level of scrutiny, perhaps?
I believe so. I think judges seem to be a little bit more attuned, especially appellate judges, to the concerns of the public that judges are still relying on stereotypes about women, and in this particular case, the judge basically seemed to find that since this girl didn't cry rape as she left the scene of the offense, that she wasn't really against being fondled the way she was. And I think judges have to be more attuned to that fact. I mean, the public is getting more and more concerned about these types of cases. They're becoming more prevalent in news coverage. Gomeshi case is a big example. But I mean, there's also cases such as the one that Robin Camp is in hot water over before the Canadian Judicial Council, where his decision was overturned and a new trial ordered, where he made some rather outlandish comments to the complainant in the case.
Greg, you say there's a bigger issue here. What is that?
Well, I mean, from a defense, and it's maybe not a bigger issue for the general public, but it's certainly a bigger issue in terms of myself being a member of a bar and a defense lawyer, is you know, the tendency now for judges, sometimes in these cases, to over-politicize their decisions. I mean, we're embarking upon maybe an era of a bit of judicial activism, I hope or not, but certainly that's the way the Americans have went. And and I wouldn't like to see it crawl up here past the 49th. But you know, at the end of the day, in the view of a barrister, a judge's, an appellant judge's job is to review the facts of the case, review the application of, review the law, whether the correct law was applied, and whether the law was correctly applied to the facts, and that's it. And if it was done in error, the decision is overturned in those facts and circumstances, and if it was fine, then it was fine. But to go on and make a habit of politicizing or judicial activism from the bench, using the bench as a pulpit to provide someone's political views or provide platitudes, in my view, is, I won't go so far as saying is it's wrong, but I think it undermines overall the professionalism in terms of the practice of law, and undermines, in the long term, the administration of justice.
Good discussion. Well, we have to take a short break, but coming up, former hockey coach Graham James is requesting full parole and a 6-month sentence for an Edmonton man who killed a cat. We'll hear from our panelists after the break on those.